what happened to Last Epoch?
Hey folks, this is Riker, and what happened to Last Epoch? Everyone was talking about this game. Every ARPG streamer was playing it. It felt like every content creator was jumping off the sinking ship that was
playing it a lot.
SS Diablo 4 bad and onto this life raft of Last Epoch. And then something strange happened. And there was good reason that Last Epoch was so popular. It was everything that so many people who were disappointed in D4 wanted. A game with a rich skill system, deep itemization, crafting, a solid endgame offering that has a fun gameplay loop and meaningful progression in it, and a robust trade system as well that doesn't penalize players who refuse to trade. And I remember being at the Last Epoch booth at Gamescom this summer in Germany, and 95% of the people that I spoke to who tried the demo at the booth expressed disappointment in D4 and said they were loving Last Epoch. Even a lot of Path of Exile players loved Last Epoch. It was basically a version of Path of Exile with a lot of bloat and complexity trimmed away, but still with a richness of depth to it. So if Last Epoch was everything that everyone wanted, why is no one playing it anymore? When it launched out of early access on February...
Just pull it up. It was Last of Us. Damn, it's still not even on there. $154 viewers. Basically, nobody's streaming it right now.
February 1st, Last Epoch peaked at over 260,000 concurrent players on Steam within days of launch. But by 1 month post-release...
I wanted to make sure that we knew what we were talking about, right? Like, it's not that I completely agree with this conclusion, but I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page.
Last Epoch was seeing less than a third of its peak player base still logging in daily.
Yeah.
Today, we're less than 2 months since release, and we're seeing about 16,000 peak daily concurrent players.
Right.
Now, in fairness, 16,000 is still a respectable number, but it does represent only about 6% of what the peak was at maximum hype less than 2 months ago. 94% of people have stopped playing Last Epoch. And the question is, why?
I think one big reason why is because a lot of streamers push the game super hard. Like, the hype for the game was, like, even higher than it probably, like, quote, should have been. Because, like, I was pushing it, Darth Microtransaction was pushing it, Riker was pushing it, Rax was pushing it, Quinn was pushing it. I think Shroud played it too. So, like, a lot of people pushed it. Way more than, like, what normally would be there. Why am I so red? That's a good question. Why the fuck am I so red? Yeah, it's a really good question. What the hell happened?
Is this just normal new game attrition? Or is this part of a bigger looming issue? Before we dive into the bigger picture, we can see that a look at a few other analytics
It's Blood Moon event.
tells the same story. Google search interest in Last Epoch is down to 6% of what it peaked at around launch, and YouTube search interest is barely better at about 8% of their peak. On Twitch, this game went from an average of 21,000 concurrent viewers throughout its release month
to
about
283.
400 concurrents today. By comparison, Path of Exile sees an average of at least 10 to 20,000 concurrent viewers during the first month of a league, and maintains a few thousand towards the end of a league. And even Diablo 4 sees an average of a couple thousand concurrent viewers.
So it's
now,
above
I'm not
that
one to
even.
point to
It's
Twitch
below
metrics
even
to say a game is
Diablo.
dead, but for those who do point to that and say Diablo 4 is dead based on its Twitch numbers, then Last Epoch is a
D4
pile
bad?
of ashes. And to some degree, this is part of a normal pattern you see with modern ARPGs, an ebb and flow of players whenever there's a content drop. One new ARPG that's trying to break from the mold in a number of different ways is No Rest for the Wicked, which is releasing into early access today and is a sponsor of today's video. Moon Studios, the developers of Ori,
I've heard
were
of this
huge
game.
Diablo 2 fans back in the day, and for years they've been working on their take of where they saw the genre evolving, which includes tackling some core assumptions of the genre, the first of which is combat. Rather than click, 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 No Rest for the Wicked takes inspiration from Eastern
It's
RPG.
only one click because I have a two-handed weapon. I just kill anything in one hit. You think I give a fuck?
With Souls-like combat. You dodge roll, you parry, you block. It's all about timing and maneuvering. The weapon you wield will establish what moveset or abilities you have, with tons of options. The attribute points you allocate as you level up will determine what weapons you can equip, as well as your bonuses with those weapons.
Damn, why'd you get all that loot? I didn't get all that stuff off him.
Focus you have to perform your special moves, all that ARPG
what the hell
stuff.
happened?
Then items themselves have different rarities, with every
Wait,
rarity
y'all are getting
remaining
blues?
useful, and affixes that focus on clear and obvious bonuses that just feel good. There's also tons of crafting. There's a whole housing system where you
y'all
can
are getting
customize your house
blues?
and upgrade all your crafting stations. There's lots of
What?
exploration. There's an endgame roguelite dungeon that they're going to implement to test your build. There's going to be up to 4-player co-op and PvP. To learn more, check out my 2 deep dive interview videos with the studio heads, and check out No Rest for the Wicked using my referral link in the description for 20% off.
But unironically a good game.
As for the conventional modern ARPGs, how does Last Epoch, a game that so successfully pulls off the modern ARPG formula, lose 94% of its player base? It's not because a competing ARPG released new content. Diablo 4's Gauntlet certainly didn't pull people away from Last Epoch.
No, it didn't.
By the time Path of Exile's Necropolis expansion launched, Last Epoch's numbers were already way down. Did some other hit game like Palworld or Helldivers 2 come along to steal all the players? Unlikely. Palworld released in January. Helldivers 2 is a very different kind of game and also released a little earlier than Last Epoch. Is it just normal for new games to lose so many players so quickly? Well, sometimes, sure. If you look back at other big games that released...
I'm kind of waiting for him to, like... I feel like I haven't really said a whole lot, because I'm kind of waiting for him to, like, explain why. And, like, then talk about, like, what the reasons are. Because, like, I've got so much to say about this and, like, why it happened.
So far in 2024, you see that Palworld was an insane smash hit.
I'm ready to pop off.
2 million concurrent players on Steam on January 27th.
Where's it at now?
And now it's only seeing 66,000. It's
What's that? 2 million, 4 million, it's 2%. So it's 2%, it's nothing. That's even worse than Last Epoch. That's crazy.
Lost 97% of its player base, an even worse figure than Last Epoch. But Palworld is
actually
kind
below
of
2%.
An outlier.
Actually, no.
No game on Steam sustains millions of players, except for maybe Counter-Strike 2. And 66,000 still keeps it within the top 25.
Let's look at 5 games. Okay, Enshrouded started with about the same amount that Last Epoch did, 160,000, and now it is down to less than Last Epoch. So you've got that Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is not a good example because it's received a lot of new content updates, but Helldivers 2 is maintaining an incredibly healthy population by consistent updates and the effective application of the live service model to a degree that every other company should use as a benchmark. Let's go ahead and think of another game. No Rest for the Wicked. No Rest for the Wicked. How many people are playing it on this? So we got... really not really a whole lot. It's an early access game. It's too early to tell. Palworld, we already saw that one. Lethal Company, don't really care about that one. Shit, let me try and think of some more of them. What are some new games that have come out recently? Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Let's go ahead and look at that. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Okay, so it started at 114, and now it is down to 9,000, 6,000. And that is with some content updates, but not a lot of content updates. Dragon's Dogma. Dragon's Dog. So it started with 228,000 people, and now it has 21,000 people. And it also came out still relatively recently in context of whenever Last Epoch came out. So you would expect these numbers to, in fact, go down. Let's see. Do I have one more game? 228k only. Wow. Yeah. It's mainly a PlayStation game, and it also was really expensive, so it's not surprising that it would go down. Monster Hunter World. No, I don't really want to do that one. Valheim, no. Baldur's Gate 3, no. It's too much. That game's like too much of a gold standard game. Come on. I gotta think of. I want to find one more game. Death Must Die. Game we're gonna play today. So the game had a peak of 13,000 players, and before the patch came out, it was at 1,000. So, of course, that is about 7%, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, pretty good. It's a pretty good number. But like, as all I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to paint a picture of the fact that this is extremely normal. This is extremely normal, and this is a use case that is repeated with many other games as well.
Most played games on Steam. Helldivers 2 hit 458,000 concurrent players on Steam on February 23rd. That's a little bit closer to last Epoch scale. And today it's still at 167,000.
So it's a consistently maintained, massively culturally relevant live service game. Huge outlier.
That's almost 2 months later, and it still has 36% of its player base. Tekken 8 reached 50,000 players on...
It's a live service PvP game. Like, the entire game is built around consistent play and improvement. It's different than Last Epoch, because Last Epoch has a clear goal in mind. That's to get the best gear. So, like, once people hit a plateau in that, they're going to stop. In fighting games, you can't get better gear.
Steam on January 29th. It's down to 12,000 now. That's 24% left. Sons of the Forest peaked at 54,000. Following its launch out of early access on February 22nd, it's down to 10,000 players today. That's about 19% left.
Yeah.
Now, Last Epoch was far more popular than these last two games, yet its player counts today are roughly on par with them. And before you go and say, well, Helldivers is a different kind of game, it's meant to be infinitely replayable. Yes. I mean, ARPGs are meant to be games that we could play for hundreds and thousands of hours.
No, I get what you're saying. I get what he's saying, but like that's not really what makes sense with Last Epoch. And the reason why is that PoE wasn't even like that whenever it came out. If PoE had just like not released any content for a long period of time, like I remember whenever PoE came out, people weren't playing it at the beginning. It took a long time for PoE to generate that type of like regular player base and people that were invested into the game. You have to remember that PoE actually officially launched, correct me if I'm wrong, 2014. And it had already been in the public eye at that point for 2 years prior to that with early access and a closed and open beta. So yeah, it was 2012 whenever it first started. So, or at least it came out to the public and people first started seeing it through like Crypt Stream. That's how I saw it originally. So those games took a long time to like grow and build an audience. It's not like that happened overnight. Diablo 3 still held popularity. Diablo 3 also was built off of Diablo 2, one of the most successful PC games of all time, and still probably one of the best ARPGs ever made. Like Last Epoch isn't built off of that. It doesn't have that type of tenure.
We're not talking about a single-player RPG that you're done with after one 30-hour playthrough. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to be explicitly clear about something.
Well, you kind of are, though, right? Because, like, for a lot of people, you are. That's the way that a lot of people play the game. Like, see, like, obviously for Riker, he's not because he's a content creator about these games. For me, I played that. I did Monoliths for a while, and I was like, okay, that was really fun. I had a great time. I had a great time playing Last Epoch. It was awesome. But then I finished the content, and I moved on to other games. I think that's what a lot of people did.
About all this. None of this is a criticism of Last Epoch. This is a symptom of a bigger problem with modern ARPGs. Last Epoch is a great game. It has tons of depth. It has all the systems in it that it should have. It checks all the boxes of what fans want included in an ARPG. Is it perfect?
I do think that like there's an element of this, and this is very subjective, and I think this will probably be the most contentious thing that I say in this video. But a lot of Last Epoch's textures, graphics, and art direction seems very cheap. This looks cheap. This looks cheap. And I think it matters. Like, you compare this to Diablo 4, listen, you can say a lot of bad shit about Diablo 4, but the fucking game looks good.
In every way, no, but it's an amazing game. But after you spent a couple weeks with it, leveling...
Last Epoch is a AAA game disguised as a single A game, and Diablo 4 is a single A game disguised as a AAA game.
Up a character, delving into the end game, you've pretty much experienced what there is to experience. Maybe you can squeeze out some more playtime by trying out a few different builds.
Yeah, sure.
But for most players, you're basically done. There just isn't enough endgame content to keep most people going for longer. And I'm part of that 94%.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you remember, like, listen, guys, like, Shaper didn't, like, even Atziri wasn't released whenever PoE was released. They didn't add Atziri until Sacrifice of the Vol. I think that was like the first patch or the second patch. And then Shaper didn't come out until like 2016. Like, PoE has had years and years and years of building on that game.
And who stopped playing? I love Last Epoch, but I don't see myself playing it again until the start of the next cycle. And I'm sure a lot of players are going to return at that point. The numbers are going to jump way up again.
Yeah.
And then after a couple more weeks...
And then they're going to go down. And then eventually, whenever Last Epoch comes out with a big patch or an expansion, the numbers are going to go way up again. And then they're going to go way down again. But whenever they go way down again, I bet that bottom out point is going to be higher than it was before the expansion, if they keep making the game better. Because it's not like good games don't just go like this. They go up and down and up and down. And then if you draw a line through the entire trend, hopefully the line goes like this and not like this.
You're going to peter back down. We saw the same thing happen with Diablo 3 seasons. Everyone comes back for a week or two before disappearing for the next...
A week might be an overstatement, but okay.
2.5 months. Path of Exile's retention fares better, but even then, half the players are gone by week 3 of a new expansion.
True.
And 2 months in, we see about 20% left.
Exactly.
So when even Path of Exile, the most content-rich ARPG out there, with the greatest amount and variety of endgame content to engage with, can't retain more than 20% of its player base after 2 months, and is down to like 10% after 3 months, how could a new kid on the block like Last Epoch hope to do better? For a game release...
Who says they have to? Who says that needs to be the goal? Who decided that the success metric should be how many people keep indefinitely playing your seasonal based ARPG? I don't think that's really the goal. I think that creating a good experience that is measured is better than trying to create an endless loop of activities that keep people in a fucking hamster wheel or in a Skinner box to play the game forever. That's what Diablo 4 tried, and that was awful. It was worse than Last Epoch.
Released by a small indie team making their first game, Last Epoch has been a huge success.
It was.
They sold 1 million copies before they even fully launched. Path of Exile has had 10 years to add endgame content, and no new game can possibly match that. No. Every new ARPG is going to feel smaller in comparison, and like it has less to do in the endgame, and honestly, that includes Path of Exile too, and I'm concerned about it. Now, the irony is that both...
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I also think that PoE having their expansion come out, Necropolis, definitely made a lot of people that were maybe still fucking around on Last Epoch move over and play PoE at that point. Because, like, also you have to remember that streamers and viewers are a symbiotic relationship where streamers will obviously go to a game and play a game because they like the game. But if a lot of people aren't going to watch the game, they might play something else instead. So, like, streamers create attention and hype for a game, but at the same time, viewers also follow the games that they want to see, and streamers will follow the viewers. So again, it's like a symbiotic relationship, and it's like, you know, it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg, and you know, basically with which came first, the chicken or the bunch of chickens, and so yeah, I think that's also a big factor.
Diablo 4 and Last Epoch suffer from the same problem, a lack of endgame content to keep players engaged in the long term. The difference is that Diablo 4 had some other major systemic problems. But even when all that is going to be fixed, we'll ultimately arrive probably at the same place we are with Last Epoch. There's just not enough endgame content to keep most people playing for more than a few weeks. Last Epoch...
Exactly, and that's not a bad thing because, like, at the end of the day, the way that I really wish that people would stop measuring game quality on hours spent. Please stop measuring game quality on that. It is the most toxic mindset to have, and the only thing it does is encourage developers to waste your time. Like, I had so much fun playing, like, here's a great example. Undertale. I played Undertale for 6 hours. I had an amazing time playing that game, and I loved it. I will remember that game in 10 years. Where do we have another game that's like a, you know, a short burst game? Well, there's the other one that's kind of like that. Coffin of Andy and Laylee. I played it for 11 hours. I beat the game. Or at least until new content comes out. And guess what? I had an amazing time. Blasphemous 1. Only 11 hours on Blasphemous 1. 16 hours on Blasphemous 2. Probably 5 of them are on that second to last boss, right? Because I refused to fucking do them with upgrades. But dude, these games were so good. And my experience playing the game was so great. I don't want to have the game quality be related to the amount of time that I spend on it. I feel like if you do that, you just have a bad time. Armored Core 6, yeah, there's another one. Dragon's Dogma 2, 70 hours? I put 100 hours into Dragon's Dogma 2.
Proves that even when you do everything else right, players are content-gobbling monsters with voracious appetites. And the way modern ARPGs are built and balanced, the way they release new content, the way the endgame loops are designed, it results in a formula that is simply unable to sustain long-term engagement for the majority of players. And
it's not designed to do that. That's not what it's designed to do. Like, each different thing has a different function. Like, you wouldn't expect a car to cook a pizza. Unless it's really hot, you know, it's like, leave the car out in Arizona and it'll probably cook a pizza. But other than that, it's not going to cook a pizza. You wouldn't expect a soda can to make a phone call. Everything has its own function, and you don't need to make that thing turn into something else. And that's the function of a game like Last Epoch. And also, it's the business model. Like, they do have microtransactions, but the game is buy to play. So if you bought the game and you had a great experience playing the game and then you stopped playing the game, they win because they got your money.
That's the
And I would
issue.
even say, if you had fun,
Modern RPGs
so did you.
are basically being developed to be devoured in a couple of weeks and then set aside until the next big content drop. Players have come to expect...
They always were done like that. And the same thing happened with Diablo 2. Whenever Diablo 2 Resurrected came out, everybody played it for a couple of weeks and then they moved on. This isn't something that is this isn't a sign of the times. This is just simply the times. It's not like games used to be like this, or, everybody used to always play these ARPGs forever. The reason why you played ARPGs forever, like Diablo 2, is because the only games you had on your PC were Diablo 2, Age of Empires 2, and maybe Warcraft 3. That was it. Maybe a couple of other ones. Maybe you have Half-Life 1. So you didn't have a bunch of other things to play. Command and Conquer. So, yeah, of course. You're stuck with that game.
This pattern from devs. Devs have come to expect this from players.
Yeah.
So rather than see devs attempt to shake up that formula to improve retention, to come up with a different plan, we've just sort of grown complacent that this is the way things are.
It's impossible to do it. It's impossible to change. No game will ever solve this problem.
And
actually, I don't know if that's true. I think that there could be like a deep dive Neuralink VR that could, but we're so far off of that, it's not comprehensible right now.
They're fine like that. I'll never forget, years ago, hearing a Diablo 3 dev acknowledge that people come back to play Diablo at the start of a new season, and then they disappear for 2 months to play other games, and that they're fine with that. And that blew my mind. Why are you fine with that? I'm not fine with that. Diablo 2 is a game that I came home from school eager to log into every day.
I completely disagree with this opinion. I think that the reason why he did that, I see where he's coming from. I understand how he feels, but whenever you actually think about this feeling, you would realize that it's actually only a product of its time. I totally understand the way he feels. That's the way I felt about WoW. And now I don't feel that way anymore, even whenever a new Classic server comes out. Because it's not the same game. A man can never step into the same river twice. You know? There's a fucking, you can't go back and recreate the same experience that you had in the year 2002. And this is the big problem that a lot of MMOs have, is that every MMO is trying to look backwards at how can we be a game that came out in 2004. What a horrible mindset to have. You need to become a game. The next successful MMO will be a game that comes out. This is, I think, why Riot fucking delayed the game. It's because they were trying to make a game that came out in 2001. That's what happened. And so now we have the same thing happening. There will never be a time that you're going to have an ARPG that's going to get people to consistently play it for the entire season of the game. It just doesn't happen that way.
For months, there were no new content drops. We got like 3 major patches throughout the game's entire lifespan.
How many other games did you have? Like, the entire world was different. Like, so I was on a call. I probably shouldn't say anything else more than that. But I was on a call with a person, and they were talking about their game. And they were talking about how great it was whenever they would log into their game, and everybody would be online in the game talking to each other, like typing to each other, because people would use the game like a chat room. And I asked the person, I said, what game has done that after social media? And they said none. Exactly. You're looking for something that doesn't exist. That's the problem. It's that people don't understand, like, these things haven't gone away, they've changed.
The core gameplay itself was enough to keep us hooked. I want to be able to log into my ARPG of choice every day.
I want to do one more. Diablo 2 Resurrected has 231 viewers. That's the exact game he's using as an example, because the world has changed.
For months, years, and not get bored. Throughout my life, I've always found one game to get fixated on for a very long time, and I'd play that game near exclusively. StarCraft, Unreal Tournament, Diablo 2, Unreal Tournament 3, StarCraft 2, Diablo 3. I spent years on each of these games. I didn't stop playing them after a month and just wait for new content to drop. Now, Diablo 2's model would not...
I did that with WoW back in the day. I remember the first time that I ever thought about quitting WoW was in Season 3 of Burning Crusade. And I got my Season 3, like, my entire life. Everything in my life, I was in high school at the time, was built around one thing. Getting the Season 3 Warrior PvP shoulders by getting 2K rating in Arena. And I fucking got him. I was the only warrior on the server, at least on Alliance, that had him. It was me. And you know what I wanted to do after that? I wanted to quit the game. I logged on. Okay, now what? It happened even then. I think that also, here's what's so crazy about it, is that at the time, I was in a guild full of people that were players of Ultima Online, okay? Like, I was like the youngest one in the guild. So a lot of those guys, and like these guys, by the way, almost cleared all of Nax 40. They were like a top 100 guild in Black Temple. I still don't know how the fuck I got invited in there. But they decided to bring me in there. And I was in this great guild full of absolute fucking wizards. And anyway, a lot of them would take breaks from WoW back then. I remember one guy who made videos for us, and I remember he said that WoW was waiting on Wrath because he quit at the end of Burning Crusade because he was out of content. Like, we had cleared pretty much everything in Sunwell, or we had gotten as far as we were going to get, and which was Felmist. That was, God, that was, oh fuck, that was so bad. And so we got as far as we were going to get, and that was it. People stopped.
Not be able to retain players today. There's more competition than ever. Gaming has evolved, and that just means that the ARPG genre needs to evolve. We gotta find the new special sauce that it takes to keep us logging in every day. Now, until that happens, the good news is we got a bunch of great ARPGs that we can rotate through whenever they release new...
I don't think that trying to, like, why? Like, that's a good question. Why should it be a focus to try to make the game constantly relevant? Because the only games that are constantly relevant are games that have no barrier to entry. Like Counter-Strike, Fortnite. You can play CS on almost anything. Fortnite, you can play Fortnite on a phone. You can play Fortnite, you don't have gear in Fortnite. You can come in and out of the game whenever you want. So if you make the one thing, and look at Helldivers 2 is the same thing. You don't really get more powerful as you level up in Helldivers 2. You unlock more options, and those options do make you more powerful, But it's not like the gun at level 1 does 10 damage and the gun at level 40 does 20 damage. That's not the way the game works. So any of those games that have these like very long-term like player bases like Fortnite are, number one, being updated constantly. They are being updated all of the time with like new stuff constantly. And then on top of that, we don't see those player numbers either. I bet Fortnite's player numbers go down too. I bet they don't have a straight line. I bet after a season comes out, it's a big popular game, and then it goes down, it goes down, it goes down, and then a new season comes out, or like that Avatar thing comes out, or like one of these new collabs comes out, and then it goes back up. Why not ARPG update constantly? Because if ARPGs updated constantly, the pursuit for gear would be less meaningful because the gear would become invalidated more often. So then people wouldn't feel as motivated to farm gear because it would just be constantly getting replaced. I think that's what happened with WoW.
Content.
Fortnite does show player count.
We can have a blast for those couple of weeks before we say, okay, there's nothing left to do.
Is there a graph for it?
And we move on to the next game. We're kind of entering the golden age of ARPGs now. But once one ARPG finds that new special sauce, that's going to be the ARPG to rule them all. But that's just my thoughts, folks. What do you?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. The game just isn't designed that way. It's just simply not designed that way. So like if you look at this, obviously it doesn't have the same like dips and everything. And I'm not sure how accurate this is, but the same thing is happening. Like it's going up and down. It's maintaining a massive amount of players, but even Fortnite is going to have ebbs and flows based off of content updates. That's normal.
Sound off in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Special thanks to my supporters for keeping these videos possible. And subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more ARPG content.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see like where he's coming from, and I wish that games were like that again too, in a way. But at the same time, I kind of don't. I'll link you guys the video. This is a great video. I disagree with a lot of the things that he was saying in the video, but I always want to hear people's perspectives on it. I really do. I like it. Look at the comments in the video. There are no comments. Are the comments deleted? What's this? Maybe it didn't load. Oh, it just didn't load. We just cycle between games during the different seasons. Yeah, and also, like, back in the day, I very rarely, I always played the same game. Like, actually, that's not really true. Like, it was weird for me. So this is what I did. I was a really big fan of, like, playing all kinds of different games. And then Halo 2 came out. And I just played Halo 2 pretty much all the time. That was my game. That was my only game. And then after Halo 2 came out, I played World of Warcraft. And that was my game. That was my only game. And Halo 3 came out. I went hard on Halo 3 for like a month, 2 months. Then I stopped playing. It was right at the beginning and the release of the game. So, Halo 3 proximity chat. Yeah, those were the days, right? Those were so fucking good. And so why is it a good thing? Why is it a positive that people have to keep playing games forever? I don't think that's a good thing. And I want to see games that just have a good, measured experience rather than games that try to artificially increase the way that people play games. Because what I think is going to happen is that if you look at a lot of these new games and the ones that are really maintaining a lot of player count, like let's look at the games that really maintain high player count. Rust is a very, very short-term, almost no investment game to get into. Rainbow Six, extremely hard game, but there is no consistent player progression. And the one thing that you're going to see with almost every single one of these popular games, the one commonality between all of them is the fact that none of them have long-term progression that affects your character's power. Every single one of these games does not have that. GTA Online, maybe? Yeah, I mean, like, I think most people are playing GTA Online, right? Yeah, it's all, like, no pixel and stuff like this. Like, you could say that you could play the campaign in GTA, which is true, technically, but the majority of people are obviously playing online and RP. So, yeah, I mean, 70k of the Rainbow Six category is Jinxie. Yeah, no, definitely that's a big factor. That's probably the biggest factor. All those games have high skill ceiling besides GTA. Yeah, and that's also another thing with like ARPGs is ARPGs don't have a high skill ceiling. Like even PoE, like you can be very good at PoE and there's people that are like way better at it than me, but the actual activities and the things that a player is doing, it's not the same as like a high skill ceiling like Counter-Strike or a high skill ceiling like League of Legends. It's totally different. It's knowledge heavy, yeah. Like basically ARPGs are leaning much more on knowledge and preparation rather than individual player mechanical skill. Now, obviously somebody like Ben from PoE is better than PoE than I am, right? Like way better. But like the difference between him and me is like not that big compared to the difference between like a bronze level League player and Faker. That is fucking insane. Like in terms of mechanical skill. Like I don't think that people understand how good some of these like pro players are. With the right build, you don't need any skill. Yeah, and so that's why these games are never going to be popular really, really long term. But that also doesn't mean that the game is bad or there's anything that's negative about the game. This is just a natural reaction to the way that people play the games. That's it. That's all there is to it.